two-man wall. Bassett goes towards the near post and puts it off the glove and in. Golden boots, my goodness, time for the lead and scoring from a set piece. Now Polisi lining it up. Polisi, okay, Marcello. Take a bow, young man. That is a worldie. Benny does hit it. There's a goal. Benny celebrates because for the first time in franchise history, Vancouver FC have beaten Pacific FC.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the review of Week 19 in the books in the Canadian Premier League. This is indeed the Canadian Premier League Newsroom show. My name is Christian Jack, and this, of course, is always presented by our friends at Volkswagen. What a weekend it was, where the lights of Hollywood shine bright again in the Peg. Vancouver Football Club had some Bitar hero to thank for a derby win. Benny banged in a beauty to rescue Forge. Try saying that 3 times. And William Akio, that is, sorted an early TKO on York in Calgary. Let's take a look at the results from Week 19 that started on Friday night in Winnipeg as Atlético Ottawa continued to climb up the table with an outstanding performance. Sam Salter and Ollie Bassett with a brace was enough to win 3-1 over Valor. Marcello Polisi's fantastic strike, not enough for the Winnipeg side. A 5-goal thriller at a fantastic derby on Saturday in Langley as Mickey Kintav and Gabby Bitar with a brace was enough to deny Pacific, who had goals through Thomas Mia-Jaguar and Gennaro Daniels. On Saturday night in Hamilton, a share of the spoils between Forge and Halifax. Benny Badibanga and Dan Nimick, the goal scorers in that one. And on Sunday, Cavalry 2, York United 1. Ali Musi and Willie Akio, enough to deny Clement Bahia's goal for Martin Nash's side. That is where we start this week. Cavalry, they go back to the top of the CPL standings with 2 early goals in each half, and we bring in our very own Mitchell Tierney for this one. Mitch, great to see you. They were not always great in this game. They had a tough week with illness, I believe, but fast starts, tactical shifts, key adjustments. Daly and Akio coming on, making a difference. Saw Tommy Wilden Jr. once again put his mark on this one. What went right for the Cavs, and overall, what did you like about the game?
Well, what went right was, they scored 34 seconds into the match, obviously, as good of a start as you could imagine. But they kind of struggled after that, to kind of build out in the new formation. They were playing with 3 at the back and then a 2 sitting in front of that. There maybe wasn't enough verticality and ability to make the ball stick from there. So they struggled from then on, and York were able to have some good moments, but that really changed when Jesse Daly replaced an injured Charlie Trafford, which might have been part of the problem as he kind of got hurt on their first goal, and they were able to have a little bit more of the ball. Then Akio comes on at the half. They shift closer to the 4-2-3-1, and Akio does what Akio does in the Canadian Premier League this season, which is make an instant impact and score his 4th goal of the season. And Cavalry were able to hold on despite a late goal from Clement Bahia. And, given what happened last week, that was important for Cavalry, but also for me a little bit disappointing from York to not put more pressure on Cavalry late, considering, it would be in their mind that they blew a 2-goal lead against Valor last weekend. So I think that, in the end, Cavalry did enough, but some questions about York going forward.
Yeah, definitely. We'll get into that in a second. And a reminder for those watching us live, please put your questions in on any team, anything Canadian soccer. We'll try and get to some of that during the next 45 minutes or so. Before we hear from some more reaction from the stadium, Mitch, you mentioned some of the collective there. Who were some of the greats? Time for us to your greats. Which players stood out above the rest for you in this one?
Yeah, I think the man of the match certainly has to go to Dan Klomp, who in those transitional moments when York tried to break forward, he'd step out of that line, make some really, really big tackles to deny them, and just an excellent season from him. And this is one of his better performances. I think Daly really impacted the match as well. When he came on, again, they were able to be a little bit better possessionally. He's just so good at adding to that press up front and making things difficult for York to play out from the back. And Bradley Camden sets up the goal and did really well, I think, in that newer wingback role at getting forward and providing some width there. Akio off the bench, excellent again. So much energy and directness from him, and just his ability to cut off that wing and get centrally and kind of bully defenders has been incredible. And then I've liked what Clement has done lately for York. Maybe not always decisive in the final third, but a really well taken goal, and he was certainly their most dangerous player during the match.
Yeah, he certainly was the best player for the visitors, no doubt, and he deserved his goal. A great finish, by the way, in the roof of the net past Marco Carducci. Don't look now, but here come the Cavs. Willie Akio, 4 goals in 4, as you mentioned. Shamit Shoma has played 3 games in a row from the start for the first time and has been very, very good. And another player who's back and healthy and very good at this level as well, to take Cavalry to another level, is Callum Montgomery. He just got his second start after getting injured earlier this season. And we go back to Spruce Meadows at Atco Field to hear from Callum after this one on the new system and playing in the back line for Tommy Wheeldon Jr.
I think we have 3, me, Kopsa, and Klompy, who can all defend. We're all pretty mobile. And it also is a great base to play from and build out of. We have some very dynamic midfielders, and it gives us some width out wide with the, I guess you could say, wing backs and stuff. So it's a great formation. I really enjoy playing on the left. It's a position where you can drive in and find the guys in the pockets. And, Klompy is one of the best in the league, and he's been fantastic this year of stepping and kind of breaking that wave of pressure on the build. It also gives you a base to play from defensively in transition moments with a 3-2. Sometimes, though, I think we give spaces out wide potentially is kind of the one flaw of it. So we were kind of, in transition moments, and we were just letting the ball stick today at times. When we go forward, we needed to hold it up a little bit better and kind of get under and build from those platforms. So I think that's one thing we can look at trying to be better next week.
Interesting stuff from Callum Montgomery, who sounds eerily like Mitchell Tierney. He's probably got a better left foot than you, though, Mitch, no?
Oh, most certainly. My left foot is for standing on only.
Very, very well said. But let's talk a little bit more about these guys. That's 7 wins in their last 10. They've changed the system a little bit. They're getting different players in. We talked about their depth. For you right now on, August 21, are they the favorites to win the league?
Well, I think we're about to find out is, they play the 4 teams, I think, that are trailing, or 3 teams, I guess, that are trailing them. Or 4. No, it is 4 in order. Pacific, Ottawa, Forge, Halifax. 3 of them are away from home. And, we always talk about this team when the lights are brightest. Will they be able to perform? Well, they're about to get pretty bright. So we'll see how they perform under that. But to answer the question, I think right now, yes. I think Cavalry have the edge in the race. We talked last week about the 15 in the sense of the 15 points they've dropped from winning positions. Well, they've now scored first in 15 of 20 matches, 16 if you include that Can-Champ loss to Pacific on penalties. So now it's, about controlling those situations and building on those leads. And, they've certainly been better at that in recent weeks than they were to start the season. And I just think there's more depth that's showing up now. You mentioned a number of the players, Montgomery, Shom, Akio, who are coming back and performing incredibly well, especially Akio. And big question mark now, Camargo, who came on and then off in this match. I think their offense is different class with him in it. And if he can't go that much the rest of the season, that's an issue. And then U21 minutes with Intigne out. But Mile Henry was really good. So those are the 2 concerns for me. But overall, I think this is a team that, again, for the most part, are in control of matches. And have the depth to really be able to ride out some big matches coming up.
Fantastic answer. Numbers to back up your analysis, and we got an answer out you as well, folks. He said yes to the favorite. So I love that. Talking of answers, never want to shy away from giving honest truths. Tommy Wheeldon Jr., here's his thoughts after this one on the victory and, of course, the adaptability sometimes in the changing of system of the Cavs.
We always have a principle of play, but we literally looked at what players we had available, what players were fully fit, and we adapted a system around it, and then the opponent coming in. We're literally playing the best away team in the league against, I think, we have the best home team in the league. So we knew it was going to be a fight, and we didn't want to use our disadvantages against us. So we found a system that we felt would work, and then we had to adapt it again, like I said, when Charlie and then when Sergio. But it worked today, right? There's no pitches on the scorecard. 3 points is 3 points.
3 points indeed. Top of the table for Cavalry. One team not top and looking up is York United. Thomas asks in the chat, are the top 5 naturally pulling away now? York obviously can claw big. It's not the tallest of mountains, but given Halifax and Ottawa's form, is it starting to look too much of a challenge? Now, we have to say they've got some home games coming up. That will certainly help and tilt them maybe back in their favor, Mitch. They've just come off a very difficult road run where they've had 3 away games in a row and difficult opponents at that, obviously in Ottawa, Forge, and Cavalry. This was all about the slow start, though, no? I mean, is it still a chance for them to get in it? Are they playing well, aside from some of those sloppy goals that they're giving away?
Well, for pretty much every other team in the league, you'd say home field is an advantage. But even though they have 5 of the last 7, they're the only team in the league who have less than a point per game at home this season. So that's what they need to change in a hurry. And yeah, I think by and large, like their last 3 matches, they've been good against 3 very good teams who are in playoff spots right now. But it's just been those moments of switching off and defensive errors that, really cost them. And then once those goals are in, it's always going to be a mountain to climb. And, they have been climbing them. They've been getting back in games and, they scored 3 goals their past 2 matches before this one. They had moments where they looked like they could come back in this one. But, as we've mentioned with Valor the weeks before and giving up early goals, like this isn't a way that's conducive to consistently winning. So that's an issue. And then the U21 minutes, I mean, it always is going to loom large. And you see in the 67th minute after they've scored their goal, they need to use that substitution window to bring on Carson Bushman-Dorman and Noah Batney, when maybe in a perfect world they would have preferred to bring on some more experienced attackers. So that's an issue that they find themselves in. So look, I mean, there's still their attack is waking up. That's one positive for them. I think, Thomas also mentioned the wingers have been looking great recently, and that's true. And Wright's been much better. But at the same time, if you can't cut out those moments, it's going to more often than not end up in losses, and they need, a lot of points now. Even if it's just 3, there's so many teams logjam there that it's going to be difficult to pass any of them.
We will remember Martin Nash was once an assistant under Tommy Wilden. He's now the gaffer. Let's go back to Calgary and hear from him after this one on his side, giving away a couple of bad goals early in the first half and second half.
I thought we were able to pin him in late, but, and we got the 1 goal back, but it was always an uphill battle. And, we put a corner straight out of play, and, those chances need to go in the box, and you need to make something of them, and we just weren't able to. We got into, like I say, good areas at the end, but the quality wasn't there. And, so unfortunate. I think for us, the game was lost in the first minute of the first half and the first 2 minutes of the second half.
That's the reaction from the gaffer. What about player reaction? Here's former Cavalry midfielder himself, York United midfielder Elijah Adakubi.
I mean, to me, it was simple. First couple minutes of both halves, I don't think we started as well as we could have. I mean, obviously the goals take that into account. First goal comes after 40 seconds, and if I'm not mistaken, I think the second half, the next one comes after 2 minutes. So if we start a little bit better, avoid those mistakes, I think we give ourselves a better chance of coming away with the 3 points. But when you start both halves going down a goal, you just make the challenge so much bigger than it needs to be. We rallied, we tried our best, but ultimately against a good side, if you give yourself that much work to do, it's ultimately a lot harder of a challenge.
It's not all doom and gloom, though, for York. Short week, Friday night against Vancouver, a team they lost to when they hosted them last time early in the season. But if they win on Friday, because they go first this week, they're back in the playoffs, at least for temporarily, a few hours at least. All right, time for a new segment as we get down the stretch here. I'm going to ask each of our correspondents at the end of their analysis. Randomly, we're going to pick one of the postseason awards, and I just want one of you guys to come up with a potential nominee for this, Mitch. So you have no idea who you're going to get. Let me put the awards into the random machine. And
yes, there's a wheel. I knew there was a wheel.
Here we go. Give me a number 1. It's going to be Defender of the Year. Ooh. So any nominee for Defender of the Year right now?
Yeah, I'll go considering his performance, and I'm sure we'll talk about him a little bit later. Dan Nimick, just been so solid this year for Halifax, and a back line that's, starting to all player penalties now. There's so much to like about Dan Nimick, so I'll go with him.
Okay, good choice. We'll see if anything comes up from the rest of them on Defender of the Year. And if you get Defender of the Year again next week, you have to name a different answer. That's the name of the rules. Mitch, as ever, continue the great work at campr.ca. We'll chat with you next week. We continue our journey from the top down in the standings, and this takes us now to second place Pacific FC after, quite frankly, a demoralizing loss to neighbors Vancouver FC on Saturday in Langley. Our man, Alex Ganguruzic, was there for us. AGR, great to see you again. You're covering all the history right now, West Coast. League One, different derbies. Now you see Vancouver win the derby, which is fantastic to see as well. What would you give this one and its compelling factor, and why? What a game this was at to be, I'm sure.
Absolutely. I think so far we've been pretty spoiled with the three derbies. You had a 1-0 thriller in the first game, late winner. We know that one. Then you had a 6-3 just back and forth chaotic affair. And then this one probably fell somewhere in between. But I mean, lead changes, some good fight, an early goal from Vancouver made things interesting. I'd probably say this is close to an 8 or 9. I'd honestly push a 9. And I think it was overall just a good showing from Vancouver in particular. You kind of wondered how a derby like this would go. They've kind of, been in a run of bad form. Pacific has had their number early on. They're looking to push on the table, but Vancouver wanted it more on the day. It felt like you kind of saw it in the lead up to the week on social media. You saw the banter, and they backed it up on the field. And you have to give credit to that, because as the 8th place team where they are in the standings, they easily could have come in and maybe not been at 100%, but they were more than 100%. And in the end, I think a victory is a fair result.
Yeah, that's a great point. They've made a lot of changes this season, Vancouver, and they figured out who's with them, who's not. You're either in or you're out, and they've moved quite a few people out, right? And I think they did it for moments like this. In particular during the game for OneSoccer, when they let in the second goal and it was 2-1. Most of the time, you think it's game over, particularly for a younger team at that point. Look, they got their breaks. We're going to get into Gazdov and Pacific's problems in a second. You got to earn your breaks, though. But this felt a little bit more like a game where the previous Vancouver earlier this season would not have been able to have the leaders, Irving getting them ready, Diaz talking them on the field. AGR, did you get to see that really in person? You could see that they're a bit more mature to believe.
Absolutely. And I think there's two factors. I think the first one is just the overall performance. I think every week I watch them, it's better. And I think, for example, that first half they played was by far the best I've seen from this season. Just if anyone has a chance to watch back the first goal, don't just watch it back on the highlights. Go back on the replay. About 2 minutes before, it was just up and down in possession. Vancouver completely it was a clinic. We were all in the press box sitting looking at each other like, who is this Vancouver team? They're going up and down and side to side. I think everyone on the field got a touch before the first goal, and it was some great, it was just great football. But then, like you mentioned, the resilience where, the last 5 games, I've said it pretty much, other than the Halifax loss, that has been their best 5-game stretch. They just weren't taking advantage of chances. They weren't, being clinical enough. They're allowing some sloppy opportunities. The fact that, they finally kind of put it together. They got the goals. They got again, that's just the second time they've scored 3 goals all season, funnily enough, both against Pacific. Mm-hmm. But you also get the defending. You really shut down Pacific. The midfield battle was, phenomenal. I thought Manny Aparicio, Sean Young, some of those midfielders barely got a sniff. Ditto with the forwards. It was just overall a complete performance, and I think it was one where Vancouver deserved it. And then, like you said, they went out and got what they deserve, which they haven't always done this year.
They certainly did. Let's go back to Langley, BC, and hear from their head coach. Here's Ashvin Gopi.
I'm so touched by not only the spirit that the boys came back from, leading the game. Normally, we were, I think, in control, and then to take 2 goals in the way, the fashion we took it, and then bounce back from that. I feel it took tremendous belief, confidence, spirit, and Gabby, all people to come and do it off the bench. I'm really happy for him and happy for all the players. But mostly I'm really proud of our fans, because through a lot of difficult times, they've stuck with this team, they've supported this team, and to see them so happy after this match means a lot to me. This derby is a special derby for so many different reasons, and I think this victory will just add more history and texture, and, in my opinion, more interesting stories for the upcoming derbies. And Canadian football and football in all countries need these kind of stories, these derbies.
Amen to that, Ashvin. And of course, will fuel the continued belief of that squad as well. Time for a list of greats. AGR, you mentioned a few things there that you liked. Who stood out individually for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think to start, there's on Vancouver. I thought Vasco Fry continues to just grow into this new role since coming over since Whitecaps too. He had some passes in the first half that got the stadium up in awe. I think there was this one outside the boot pass he played out to the right wing that had a few people just excited with what he was able to put up. I mean, Callum Irving in goal made some huge saves when the game was maybe not in Vancouver's favor. That save he made on Sean Young was ginormous, just in terms of, first of all, how close it was, and then it was a 2-2 game. Pacific scores that, you kind of feel it's game over. So I definitely think Callum Irving had a strong performance. Mickey Cantava as well had a good, performance, kind of in a return to the lineup after not starting. So there's a few guys across the board for Vancouver put in the shift. And then, of course, Gabriel Bitar off the bench, just great super sub. Anytime you play, I think it was 16 minutes was the final tally. He had 10 touches, 2 goals. I think you can't complain in terms of an attacking performance like that. And then for Pacific, it was a bit of a quiet game, but I thought Kakuta Mane had probably one of his best performances of the year. And it kind of showed that at halftime, James Merriman went to Saloof, and it was for Adonijah Reed and not Kakuta Mane. And I think that was a good vote of confidence for Kakuta Mane. But otherwise, Thomas Meyer-Jigger gets his goal and overall was a bit of a leader back there. But for the most part, a quiet game across the board.
Yeah, not the best. We'll get into Pacific in a second. And one thing on Mane, he had the beating of Rocco Romeo at one point, and Romeo just grabbed his shirt and Mane went down. Questionable whether it was a penalty or not. But I want to see Mane just carry on, keep going. You had you were in, and I think a more confident and more minutes behind Kakuta Mane will probably see the ability to back himself and not fall down in those moments. You mentioned Bitar; he was the player of the match for a good reason. Let's go back and listen to what he had to say after this one.
Yeah, that was probably one of the best first halves we played all season. So, honestly, we had a great game. I think just two bad mistakes, and Pacific's a great team. They're going to capitalize whenever you make some mistakes, and they did just that. So, from a team effort, I thought we were perfect, and like you said, we were really well organized, and we stopped anything they really shot at us. So we did well today.
Clearly a real contrast in styles out west in BC. One side very happy, another one nowhere near happy and nowhere near content with what the performance was as well. Let's go back and hear from Pacific FC Gaffer. Here's the thoughts of James Merriman.
I don't understand our lack of motivation and desire to take games, to take points, to finish when we're attacking. We spoke a lot about what we wanted to do, and I don't see it and I don't feel it, especially going forward. We need to want to score goals more, and then on the other side we concede 3. So really disappointing day. We need to see it back, but I don't understand our lack of motivation to score goals.
Absolutely fascinating comments again from James. There's so many places to go here. It's probably one of the biggest storylines in the league, unquestionably, right now at AGR. He talked a lot first about the lack of motivation and the ability to finish games. I think they've got an XG of 15 in the last 11 games, and they scored 9 goals or something like that. Anyway, so around about those numbers. They're not converting. They had a golden opportunity to put this game out of sight. Ongaro had a couple of great chances. And I want to run this stat by you as well before I ask what you think of the concerns. The last 9 games in the Canadian Premier League, Atlético Ottawa 20 points, Cavalry 18, Halifax 16, Forge 15, York 9, Valor 8, Pacific 8, Vancouver 7. That's 9 games. That's been going on for a while. They are down there, not even in with the playoff teams at the moment, AGR. Most people think they'll be fine. They're going to be in the playoffs. But this slide is a little concerning. What's the major concern for you?
Yeah, well, another one, 2 wins in 9 games, I think it is as well, right? That's not exactly you compare it to Ottawa, Cavalry, everyone around them, everyone's soaring right now. And it feels multifaceted for Pacific because I think for me, the big one has also been defensively, because I think offensively, I think these sorts of patches happen. I think overall, from what we've seen of them, I think they're too talented to not have it even out over the course of a season. I think we've kind of seen that when they've been in form, they'll score goals. But also, if I call back to their stretch where they won about 4 or 5 in a row, look at the scores from those games. Those weren't, of course, they had that 6-3 against Vancouver in there, but it was a 1-0 against Forge. It was a 1-0 against Valor. I'm pretty sure there's another 1-0 against there somewhere.
Against York.
When they were, there you go. Yeah, it was just a run of 1-0s. It was defending. It was just the overall team defense, that the press, the back four, everything was just kind of clicking. And I think they've really lost their way defensively. And look, it's something where their offense is, I think, again, like we've seen, the XG speaks for itself. When the outbursts they've had, they've got a very deep offense, but they also kind of haven't had a guy to step up. And not saying you need a guy to go out and score and win you games. I mean, it's something where you can absolutely score by committee, but what that means is in moments like this, say, look, you're up against Vancouver, it's a 2-2 game. You need someone to step up and get that goal. You're kind of wondering, who is it, right? You can look at everyone and ask questions. Like Adonijah Reed has been playing great. He's been getting good pockets. He's underperforming his XG by almost 2 this year, I think I saw, which is, it's surprising. Someone like Easton Ngaro, he's kind of been better off the bench and has also, had moments of just underperformance in front of goal. Eamon Salouf is, you're still debating, is he best off the bench? Is he best as a starter? Kakuta Mane still finding his feet. You're looking at all those attackers in harmony, together. It's an attack that when it's on. So we've seen it. It can be destructive. But I think with the lack of main presence in terms of, okay, who's the guy who's going to go out and score you the goals? Heck, just look at the example when they had those run of penalties. They missed the penalties because you almost don't even know who's going to take the penalties.
Who's going to take them? Yeah.
So it's
a great
look
point.
at that, and then defensively, it's something where, I think defensively has been what's let them down. I think the XG against has gone up, the goals against has gone up, and they just those kind of 2 factors kind of tie in for me personally.
Really good team, underperforming at the moment. The talent's there, and this is the stretch that they can turn it around very quickly. But one of those big question marks, as well as all that attacking questions that AGR mentioned, is, of course, in goal. Gazdov fought for at least 2 of the 3, a very difficult day for him. And that was part of a big panel discussion that I had alongside Jordan Wilson and Adam Jenkins after the game on OneSoccer. Here's part of that discussion from Saturday.
Gazdov starts the year, and he came in as a 19-year-old. He was going to always have to prove himself and find those moments. But now we saw him earlier in the season play himself out of that number 1 job. Basket came in. I don't think that he took that opportunity with both hands, KJ, but you see a performance like this tonight, and now, Jordan, you're asking yourself again, Basket has to start the next game, doesn't he?
I'd say so. Look, they're 10-10. Basket has played 10, okay, and Gazdov has played 10 as well. No one has taken the number 1 jersey so far, in my opinion. I think Gazdov, yes, he's young and he still has a lot to learn, but you have to look at the specific side. This is the biggest weakness. Yeah, I can break down going forward and how they attack, and maybe they need players a killer in the box. But when you're going from Callum Irving, who was tried and true, who played with confidence, who showed up big for Pacific, and they won a North Star Shield, this is their weakest position. So no shade to Gazdov, to Basket, but one of them needs to step up going into this run, because you can't think if you get by Didic or if you get by any of the defenders and you shoot on goal, it's going in. That is insecurity 101 for a defender. For me, I just want a keeper behind me that is going to make the saves that they should make. And either it be Gazdov or Basket, one of them needs to step up.
Yeah, look, this is undoubtedly their number 1 big problem. Undoubtedly, it has been since the start of the season. They've left a lot of points on the table. And by the way, they didn't leave 1 today, they left 3. So that's another 3 points they've left on the table. They should be a lot higher than they are. But this is the fork in the road in the Canadian Premier League when it comes to one road is development and one road is results, right? You've got a 19-year-old there that everybody I talk to is singing his praises. They've got a new goalkeeping coach who's traveled all around the world, Pedro Guerrero, who I spoke to in Halifax, who loves Gazdov, okay? Goalkeepers make mistakes. I think he made 3 today, and it's cost him 3 points. And that young kid, he's 19, he's going to be absolutely dejected. And it's going to be really difficult to pick him up. And James Merriman, Pedro Guerrero, that whole staff has got to think, what do we do now? Because they've already benched him once. I don't think you can do it again and again. If he doesn't play next week, for me, it's Basket has to play the rest of the season.
Right.
So that's why it's very difficult. And look, you can see in Merriman's face, he's not the only reason why they lost today, by the way. We're going to go into that and show some of the chances. They should have been out of sight. Ongaro had a couple of clear chances. There's a lot of players there that have let that team down today, in my opinion, and let their manager down. But Gazdov, I feel for him. But as I said, there's a lot of people who think very highly of him, but at 19, it's a difficult, delicate situation, but it is that Canadian Premier League development versus outcomes. You've got to get it balanced.
And I'll say something quickly. Benching a striker or a winger or a midfielder and benching a goalkeeper are two different things. You bench a keeper, it says, I don't have any trust in you. You can't be flip-flopping. You have to almost choose. So James Merriman, this is a big decision because you're at a crossroads for the last quarter of a season. And Pacific, I think we all can agree that they're going to be a playoff team if they just take care of business for the most part. Right? Where they fall, we don't know. But sorting that keeper situation out is so crucial.
Crucial, as Jordan Wilson would say at the end of it, AGR. All right, let's go to the final question. Time for your award nominee question. I'm going to spin the wheel. Let's get some award going here. Let's press it again. You've got Manager of the Year, AGR. Okay. So throw me a nominee right now for our way.
I'll have to go for the new face. I think Patrice Geyser, the fact where he's taken this Halifax team in just year one, the football that they play, the buy-in he's got across the board, the fact that they're not just in a playoff push like would have been a dream scenario for the Haligonians, but they're in a title push and they've got some exciting players off the board. So I think to look anywhere but Patrice Geyser, one of the nominees, would feel wrong at this stage.
I like it. Okay. Listen, always appreciate your work. Great job. Keep it up. And we'll chat with you again next week. Thanks a lot, Alex. A reminder, you can still play CPL Predictor Weekly, brought to you by our friends at TonyBet. Big supporters, of course, of Canadian soccer. Campl.ca/predictor, where you can choose the correct scores, win $20,000, up to $20,000, tickets to games. It's all there on the website. And of course, we thank our friends at Volkswagen for this great show. Next, we head to Winnipeg, Manitoba, where Atlético Ottawa have stormed into the top three for the first time this season. And boy, oh boy, Benedict Rose, did they do it in an impressive manner in this one. Great to see you, Benny. What went right for them? What did you like about this one?
Yeah, it was a very complete performance, I think, from Ottawa. It was one where, Carlos Gonzalez has been speaking about it for a few weeks now, where it's just they need to get everything right in order to make this surge up the table. And in this game, they had the attackers firing, they had the defenders playing as well as kind of expect them to, and that kind of Ottawa blueprint of playing on the road, I guess, where you hit them on the counterattack and then you focus on defending and solidify things at the back. And it's worked for them for the better part of 2 seasons now, and it did again in Winnipeg on Friday night.
It definitely did. We're going to get into Ollie Bassett in a second, but wide areas on a big pitch. Asi, Dos Santos, who scored earlier this season, always plays well there. Certainly helped, but a bit of a disappointing day for Ryan Yesley, who's had a fantastic season, but just happened to probably have his biggest errors at the wrong time all at once.
Yeah, you're right. I think on all 3 of these goals, he probably thinks he would have done better. On the second goal you just saw, he let it slip through his fingers on the free kick. If you're watching on YouTube, you just saw Ollie Bassett. He kind of sees Yesley maybe cheating a bit, going to the back post and looking for a cross, and Bassett just has the wherewithal, I guess, to put it at the front post and tucks it into the top left corner. And on the first goal, he wasn't as tight to his near post as he would have liked to be either on Sam Salter's goal. So you're right, Yesley has had a great season, but this one is one he'll want to forget, I think.
Yeah, we'll get into Valor again in a second. Let's talk more about Atlético Ottawa. I want to hear your thoughts on them in a second, but they are flying and full of confidence. Let's go back to IG Field in Winnipeg, some reaction from their gaffer. Here's Carlos Gonzalez.
Well, I'm very proud of the win. As you said, it's a very big one after a very short week of preparation and with a really long trip on Sunday and playing in a difficult field. So big credit to what the players did today. I think that they played a very consistent game and we were very solid again, and we show a good image of the type of team that we have to be until the end of the season. So very happy for that, for the effort that the players are putting every single minute on the field.
Okay, Benny, let's get into it. Carlos Gonzalez says, a very good image of what we want to see on the field. I think I know what that is. And obviously we know defensively how important it is to them and how difficult they are to break down. They are still last in the league, by the way, in opposition touches in the opposition's box away from home. Last. But we have seen a significant upgrade in their attack over the second half of the season so far. For example, in the first 10 games of the season, they only scored 2 or more twice in a game. 2 or more, twice out of 2 out of 10. Now they've scored 2 or more in 7 of their last 10 games. So something's clicking for them, no? Offensively?
Yeah, I think we saw this last year with them as well. We wanted to see them sort of evolve, I guess, instead of just being a defensive team to maybe have more things going in attack. And I think over these last half of the season so far, like last 10 games, I guess, we've seen that in the wide areas. I think has been really especially important. John NLSC has taken another big step forward, I think, this season. He's been excellent. Johnny Dos Santos, as you mentioned, has been good on the left since he's been back the last couple of games. And I think they'll be even better in that regard when they get someone like Max Tiso back who can also help on that left wing. I think the wide areas are somewhere where I don't think they necessarily struggled last year, but maybe weren't as effective. Obviously, the Blue Tabla kind of doing his thing, but I think now they have threats on both sides of the pitch, and any player that they know they can sort of rotate into this team, they know can make a big impact on the attack.
That segues great into my next question, Benny. Time for a list of greats on either side for you, and which player stood out above the rest?
Yeah, one of them was John NLSC. You saw on the first goal against for Sam Salter, that amazing run he made and the low pass into the box for Salter, and he was excellent all night long. He won a lot of his battles on his right wing. Ollie Bassett, the main man there, he has been for the better part of 2 seasons now. 2 goals. He was excellent in this game. And then Nate Ingham as well. I thought he was excellent in goal. All-State Nate, as people have been calling him recently. Big saves in this game. He was excellent. And then for Valor, I'll give a shout out to Marcelo Polisi as well. But these last few weeks, the results haven't necessarily been going Valor's way, but they need a veteran leader to kind of step up and be a leader on that team. I think he's been doing exactly that and scored his first professional goal with a really nice look from distance.
I'm pretty sure Ingham prefers All-State Nate to Nady Bird, which got a nickname when he was a kid because some other kid had Nathan and he didn't know what else to call him, and it stuck. By the way, shout out also to Zapater and Iliadis in midfield, who I thought were tremendous, and that's allowing Bassett to get a little bit further forward and really become this dynamic attacking player. You talked about it, player of the match and a contender again for player of the week. Let's go back to IG Field and hear from Oliver Bassett himself on his improved play over the last few weeks.
I think overall, maybe the last 3 weeks, kind of from the Vancouver game, after the Vancouver game, we played Calgary at home, Halifax away, and York at home. I don't think I was good enough in them games, if I'm being honest, but I think the last 2 games I've kind of took my level back up, and I think overall, I've got to be happy with how I'm performing at the moment, but we have 8 games left, and I just want to try and do as well as I can from now until the end of the season, and just try and help this team as much as we can, and hopefully with goals and assists we can be up there come the last game of the season.
Talking of goals, Ottawa got their opening goal in the 11th minute, which was just seconds after the 10-minute mark ticked over again. And again, it was deja vu in Winnipeg. Here's Philip Dos Santos on that and the fact that they continued to give away far too many early goals.
Yeah, 7 times now in the first 15 minutes. We speak about it. Look, it's a mental discharge. Those things are not, you try to recreate scenarios, you try to change things to see how the guys are going to come into games. I don't think there's a reason. I think that, you look at how we entered the game, I felt that we came in well. We were on top of them, and then a goal that we absolutely need to deal with. That's a routine sequence, and we didn't deal with it. So at the end of the day, it's about making the plays, Benedict. That's football. It's a game of moments. You could dominate possession. You could dominate every statistic of the game. If you do not deal with the moments, well, you're going to lose games. That's as simple as it is.
Tough times for Philip Dos Santos. XG was almost identical for anyone who didn't watch the game to tell the story. Those who did will remember Walter Ponce having not one, not two, but three really good chances, Benny. They're now, I think, 9 points back with 8 to play. Looks like maybe a mountain too hard to climb. But did they do enough here to see that maybe they can still put a bit of a run in together?
I don't think they did enough in this game. I think they did enough in the game last week against Cavalry to show that, they can go toe-to-toe with the best teams in this league. And 9 points in 8 games isn't impossible. They could do that in a few weeks if they have a good run and someone above them falters a little bit. But 9 points in 8 games is going to be a very tough, very tall mountain to climb for sure.
All right, final question, and let's go to my random spinning wheel here for Benedict to give me an award-winning nominee at this point as we head down the stretch. Oh, we have our first repeat. We've got Defender of the Year, and you can't use Nimic because he's been taken, Benny. So do you have a nominee for us at this point? Who's been catching your eye as a defender?
I'll go for Dan Klump at Cavalry. I think he's been excellent again this season. He's he's playing in a role this year where he can get on the ball more and he can play football more, I guess, than he could in previous years. He's playing a center back instead of right back as well. His more comfortable position. And I think he's been rock solid all season long.
Love that answer. So we have single A Dan and double A Dan right now for the award nominees for Defender of the Year in our show at the moment as we continue to look down the stretch in the last few weeks of this one. Benny, great work as ever. Read his work at campr.ca and a great feature this week on Tom Field that you can read there on his wonderful recovery back to playing football. As Benny does, he tells a story like very few others can. I appreciate your work, Benedict. Final stop of the show takes us to Hamilton, where it was 4th versus 5th at the time of kickoff. And in the end, Charlie O'Connor-Clark, welcome. It ended the same way, 4th versus 5th. But in between, it was tense. It was tight. And as you said, it felt like the playoffs, no?
It did. It had some of those factors that you see in a playoff game, and not just that all of the goals were from set pieces. It has that kind of opening stage where these teams are feeling each other out. They know each other very well at this point in the season. These two coaches know each other incredibly well. Bobby Smirniotis and Patrice Geyser have known each other for years, and they seem to be trying to figure one another out. And then it just gets intense and it gets fiery. There's a lot of yellow cards in this game. There's quite a lot of physicality in this game, but it was an entertaining one. And I think part of the reason for it to feel like a playoff kind of atmosphere, kind of energy and intensity, was because that's what Halifax wanted specifically. And that's what Patrice Geyser said after the game, that he says if you train like it's a game and if you play a game like it's a playoff game, then once it actually is a playoff game, you're not nervous or anxious and you can just play like you have been in the weeks and months prior. So I think that a lot of credit is certainly due to Halifax for the way they approached this game against a difficult Forge team, but also to Forge for finding their way back in via that moment of magic from Benny Badibanga. Just an incredible set piece goal, and kind of the confidence you need to step up and take that ball from someone like a Kyle Becker or even a Tristan Borges who's on the pitch at that point. That says a lot about where he is already in his arrival at his club.
Yeah, that's a really, really great point. We're going to hear from him shortly as well. And there's a lot to get into about Hamilton and Forge at the moment. But let's talk Halifax. They had the lead. They had the chance to jump into third. Do you think it was a case of 2 points dropped and a missed opportunity, or more seeing how fast they've come from where they once were? Was it more of a point gained and more confidence in terms of believing that they shouldn't really fear anybody?
I think that's definitely what they'll feel this week once they arrive home and they kind of look back at this game. I mean, you do look at it as last time they went to Hamilton, the same thing kind of happened, where they take a lead and that time it was Massimo Ferrin with the goal and it was Wubens Passius with almost the last kick of the game, equalizing that one. This time I think they feel a little bit better because we've talked a bit about Halifax's away record and how they hadn't won a game until a couple weeks ago when they went to York. Now they're showing that they're kind of learning how to get those points on the road, how to see those games out. I think they definitely felt at halftime when they were up 1-0 in this game, they were never going to win this game 1-0. And I think they're certainly disappointed that they couldn't kind of put the foot down and put another goal in it. They had a couple of chances, but I think Forge really adapted well to some of what they were doing. There was a lot of those balls over the top and kind of those runs from Jordan Peruzza trying to force them back that Forge adjusted to in the second half and took some of that energy and that ability out of Halifax. I think they've definitely proven that they're incredibly hard to beat in this league, even when they go away from home. But they will look at it and be maybe a little bit annoyed that I think they're second in the league now and still are and have been most of the year in points dropped from winning positions with 10. And I think all but one of those games has been away from home, which is going to be frustrating.
That's the key right there. I could make the case that they could beat any team, home or away. Definitely at home, but away was still the case becomes more difficult to build that against them, right? In terms against the opposition. And right now, where do they sit in the playoff spot? The one spot where they wouldn't play at home. This is a team that knows if they get that home game and suddenly no one wants to go to Halifax and that full stadium is going to be electric. But right now, that's got to be the priority for them to try and get there, unquestionably. But at least, again, another point build on away from home. Let's go back to Tim Hortons Philly in Hamilton and get the thoughts of the Wanderers coach. Here's Patrice Geyser.
We're the second youngest in the league, and I have a feeling by the time the season finishes, we'll be the youngest team in the league on average age. That's brave and has the desire to win and play the right way. I think those are two really dangerous things, Charlie. You look at it, we have the commitment to want to press, as you saw tonight, being away on the road. We have the commitment to try to keep the ball in our own 18-yard box, which makes me nervous, but, it's exciting to see. So I think our formula is very successful in the way we have a deep team. I just said in the change room, Mo was man of the match. And Mo didn't start last week. Future the way he wanted. He's coming off an injury, but same as Zach didn't play last week. Aiden Daniels didn't play last week. So I think our depth is going to give us a lot of energy that we need. And I think our guys have the highest level of desire to do something incredible, and make this a year for all of us to remember.
Great words again from Patrice. I also showed some clips post-game about that press that really made Halifax and Forge, got Forge uncomfortable against Halifax. I shared that on Twitter as well from OneSoccer if you want to go look at that. Charlie, a time for the list of the greats. Who some of the individuals who stood out above the rest here? I know Mo Omar, as mentioned by Patrice, had a really good game.
Yeah, Omar did, and I think he and Lorenzo Caligari did very well in the middle of the park in this game. Forge's midfield had a bit of a different look with Kadeem Kane starting in there, but so I think Caligari and Omar were able to kind of establish themselves and play those passes, those longer balls, which were effective, especially in the first half. I thought Jordan Peruzza was quite a handful for Forge's backline. He wins the penalty as well, and he did a lot when the ball did come into his feet, especially from those longer switches. He was running at center backs, forcing them back and trying to find space in those areas. But I think for me, the biggest Halifax story continues to be that young defense. Nimic's already been mentioned on this podcast, but him and Cale Lockery continue to grow and be incredibly solid at both being 22 years of age. Halifax have conceded 22 goals this year, and that's joint fewest in the league along with Pacific. Nimic's played every single minute of that, and I think Cale Lockery's started 17 out of 20 of those games. And for those guys to just step in to that lineup so quickly and handle a lot of really, really talented attacking forces in this league with such ease is astounding for me. And I think, Patrice Geyser seems to say after every game that he is expecting Dan Nimick to be with the Canadian national team at some point, and I would advise that happens soon because he's also Ireland eligible and England eligible. So I don't know. The Republic of Ireland can always use a center back that can.
I was going to say you're about to call all your scouts, family members, and everybody in Ireland.
That's exactly what I'm going to do if Canada don't call him up soon.
Don't turn on Canada, Charlie.
Forge though, individuals. I thought Kyle Becker continues to be Kyle Becker. He's a player in the league that always gives you even on his worst days, it's a 7 out of 10, and most games it's an 8, 9, and sometimes he takes over completely. So I think this was another excellent performance from him. Benny Batty Banga continues to be a force and a player that Forge don't have or didn't have before he got there, with his ability on the dribble and to drive at fullbacks and to cause problems, create space. And he's just got tremendous confidence to immediately fit into this team and cause all sorts of headaches for fullbacks, especially. And that set piece is a special strike from that player as well.
Yeah, those who don't know much about Benny Badibanga is 27-year-old Belgian winger who's had over 7 years of professional experience playing in the Netherlands and Belgium, and obviously got his first start last week and was very good and almost got in our Team of the Week last week against York. This time, of course, will be in the Team of the Week after a fantastic strike from about 25 yards out to go near post and the free kick to get a crucial point. And afterwards, Charlie caught up with Benny on the pitch at Tim Hortons Field.
Charlie O'Connor-Clark alongside Benny Badibanga, All-State post-game reaction. Benny, just what a goal that was from the set piece. I think that's where we have to start. Tell me about the confidence it takes to step up and take that ball and to pick out a corner like that.
When you have your back against the wall, you have to dare everything you can. So when you have the chance, then try and see if God is with you. And that one, yes. So.
Absolutely.
Thank God.
It's only your second start with the club, but you already seem to have a lot of good chemistry with some of the players on the pitch. Just tell me about what it's been like for you coming to this team and being able to fit into the lineup so quickly.
It was a pleasure, and every task from the coach was clear, so it was easy for me to adapt and to fix on it. I have also good play on my side, so it's always easier to adapt and to adjust my game. And you see that they play with my quality, so it's easy for me to adapt myself like in this kind of team.
Yeah. Bobby said that you're a player that kind of fits the philosophy of this club, and he likes kind of the way that you play, especially your background in football. Tell me about what you like about the way that this club plays and maybe how that suits your strengths.
I like when you play the ball on the ground when we're there. I think we train our entire life for that kind of thing. So for me, it's not a pleasure to kick the ball and run after it. I train all my life to play, so I try to play when I can. So yeah.
Last word on this game. It was a tough one, right? Halifax, a good team, came here to play. Tell me about kind of the mentality you guys had to have to really fight and to end up finding that equalizer.
We had to have a kind of abnegation. We had to fight for each other, and that's what we did. Even after the first goal, we considered a penalty that I'm not sure that was penalty, but okay, that's a referee decision. Okay, and we had the good mentality to react, and that's what we did. It would have been better with the 3 points, but okay.
CPL table continues to get incredibly tight. Forge FC 1, Halifax Wanderers 1. Benny, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Huge thanks to Benny, who I think many people are starting to really like in Hamilton. There's thousands on the pitch again after the game. If you've not been to Hamilton, by the way, the celebrations afterwards, as you could hear the party in the background, are pretty interesting. And again,
it was terrifying, by the way. It was terrifying. We got invaded on the pitch like 5 minutes after the whistle. There was chaos trying to find players I wanted to talk to. Yeah. It's crazy. Good stuff.
Lots of guys running around. We root for chaos in the Canadian Premier League, either between the whistles or even afterwards. But thankfully, everyone was okay. But let's talk a little bit more about Forge. Before we get your take on them, let's go back to Tim Hortons Field and listen to their head coach. Here's Bobby Sminiotis.
It's a tough one. You look at it and you see if you're in danger. It's another game where you weren't in danger a lot. I think there's 5 moments where they've played a ball for about 60, 70 yards, and one of them causes a penalty, and and that's about it. The rest of the time, Halifax did a good job. They worked hard, just closing down spaces, doing everything. They've gotten a goal in the first half, which obviously helps their cause and closes spaces on the field. So then you usually need something special, and we had some special moments in the second half. We got a very big special moment. With Benny's goal, a goal that we needed, a goal we needed from a set piece, which we haven't had this year. You look back in the history of our club, and we're scoring upwards of 10 to 15 of those per season. So something we needed, and we take the point. Same way I said last week, it just seems like nobody wants to make movement in these standings.
Familiar story for Forge. I've got a stat for you here, Charlie. I'm interested to know what you think of this. Many people think of Forge as being this dominating team. This season, that certainly hasn't been the case. In fact, they've led for 461 minutes. That's 24% of their season. They've trailed for 445 minutes. That's 23.5%. Almost identical time spent trailing than winning games. Now, they've been decent recovering positions from losing games. 11 points have recovered from losing positions. But what does that tell you? Is it concerning? Are they just average right now? Another gear? What are your overall thoughts after watching this team live again?
This is one of those games for me where I look at it and I think about Forge, and I almost feel like a broken record again in terms of talking about how Forge are able to find a way back into the game, like pretty much no other team can in the CPL. They do find that extra gear, but at this point, this late in the season, I think I would be concerned that it takes going behind for them to find that extra gear at times. This is something we talked about with Pacific actually a few weeks ago when Amir Didic brought it up, because they kept getting scored on early and having to wake up later in games. This has happened quite a few times for Forge this year, where they will fall behind, and whether it was against York or Halifax this time, or I think there was the Valor game earlier in the year even, where they will concede even in the first half, despite playing in many of these instances the better football on the day and having the better chances in the game. But still, it's that one moment that they fall behind, and then they have to fight their way back into it. And then they just make their own lives more difficult than they need to be. And I think that's something that will be increasingly frustrating for this club and for Bobby Smirniotis, because I'm really not sure what it is with this team at the moment. I know that they certainly adjust in games very well. And that's in large part due to the tactical identity of this club and how flexible and how able they are to adapt on the fly and change their shape and things like that, especially when they need to and identify a problem. But I think teams are coming into games very, very well prepared to take on the opening of a game against Forge. I think there are teams that are starting to feel like they might have figured out what they can do in the early stages against Forge to find a bit of a foothold in a game like that, even if it does often in these cases require Forge to not make the best use of their chances in the early stages, and then they fall behind. And I think with the table like this, as Bobby kind of alluded to, you can't really afford to be doing that anymore. Forge definitely need to be turning some of these games into wins. They need to be finding clean sheets, which is something that has been at times an issue for them as well. It's especially at home this year. So I think that there are genuine concerns in the side at the moment, but as I've said, they do have a level of quality and a level of ability in those games to get those points that maybe other teams wouldn't when they fall behind. It's just that next step is to find that level of maybe being more ruthless, because we've seen a ruthless Forge in the past, but it hasn't come out all that often this season.
Yeah, we spent a lot of time on this show, earlier this show as well, talking about Cavalry and their ability to give away points early. Pacific, particularly going through it right now. And if you're Forge, the way that you're playing, I think you'll be very happy that they've not gone and run away and hiding away, because the way that Cavalry and Pacific have played a lot, I think they should have a bigger lead over Forge. But don't look now, Forge somehow are still there. And a lot of it comes down to the fact that they have found a way to win games or come back from win games. We mentioned it, 23.5% of their season when they've been trailing. And then remarkably, they've been behind in 13 of their 21 games, which is incredible, really, to think about when you think about Forge, who usually is at the top of the league and dominating a lot of games. That's not been the case so far. But as we alluded to, and we'll show the league table shortly, they are still absolutely very much in this title race. All right, Charlie, last question for you, and that means time for the CPL Award nomination game. I'm going to spin it. Here we go again. And we've got Goalkeeper of the Year.
Goalkeeper. Okay, goalkeeper, so I do actually, I think I am starting to believe that you actually do have a wheel back there. I thought you were just picking him. Okay,
I'm definitely not picking him. I got Goalkeeper of the Year. It comes up in order. You just missed out an under 21 Player of the Year at number 2. So
I'd much rather talk about Goalkeeper, because I have no idea what's going on with under 21s. I think at this point for me in the season, it's Tristan Henry. Actually, I think he's been the most consistent goalkeeper in the league this year. He's actually maybe been a little bit busier than he has in other seasons for Forge, but he has taken his game to another level. He's been, I think, more confident, more comfortable in that net than ever. And I think he has been excellent this year, as he often is for Forge. So I think at this point for me, if the season ended today, that's where my vote would be going.
Didn't even plan it, and it carried on talking about Forge. Look at that. There we go. All right, Charlie, stay with me. Let's take a look at the CPL standings as we head out through this game from week 19 and look at these standings. I mean, it's absolutely remarkable to think how close this is. Cavalry, 33 points from 20. Pacific, 1 back on 20 games played, 32. Atlético Ottawa, here they come, 31 points from 20, and the best team in the Canadian Premier League for 2 months. Forge, I also have 31 and have played 1 game more. Halifax are 5th, and a team like Halifax are only 4 points back off the top and 5th. York's still in it, 7 points off the top with 26 points from 21. Valor sliding away, 20 from 20, and Vancouver 17 from 20, still eyeing up Valor for that 7th spot. Charlie, takeaway from this, I guess, remains the 4 points from 1st to 5th.
Yeah, it's just ridiculous. I mean, how many times over the weekend, even during games when a goal was scored, would you look at the table and it would be completely different? Yeah. Right? Especially in the late stages of that Vancouver Pacific game and just before when Halifax took the lead. It's crazy to me. And what is crazier as well is the top 2 and the 3 and 4 teams play each other this weekend. So that is going to, that could cause massive changes, or they could both be draws and then nothing will change unless Halifax have an opportunity to beat Valor and really shoot up the table there a little bit. Every single one of those teams will absolutely tell you that they feel like they can win the title at the moment in the regular season, and they're right. Any of those 5, even 6, maybe York United can have a bit of a run here. They've got some home stretch coming up here. Any of those teams could go on a run, especially when you play directly against the teams that you're competing with, which is the beauty of an 8-team league, where you don't necessarily all the time need to just pray that another team helps you with your job. You can go out and beat them yourself in most cases. So I think that is going to be just fascinating. We've got 8 games left for every team. Forge and York have 7 games, and like all of those games are essentially going to feel like playoff games for those teams.
As they should. That's what it matters. Every game matters. Let's take a look at it. You teased it. Let's look at the fixtures ahead of this week. York United against Vancouver kicks it all off on Friday night at 7 o'clock local. That's a huge game for York. Get down to York Line Stadium. That will be a special one for families there as well. On Saturday, we have a doubleheader. Halifax versus Valor at 4 p.m. local. A big game for Halifax to continue their momentum and look to score an 8th successive home league game for the first time. Atlético Ottawa versus Forge. You mentioned it there. 3rd versus 4th. And that should be a special one in the nation's capital on Saturday night at 7 o'clock. And then we wrap it all up on Sunday at 3 o'clock local in Calgary, Alberta. And it's 1st versus 2nd. We'll know a lot more next week. And of course, we'll be back on Monday to break it down. More twists and turns are definitely coming our way. Just 2 points now separating the top 4. 4 points from 1st and 5th, and only 7 points between 1st and 6th. It is truly remarkable. Charlie, thanks again. Appreciate your great work. Charlie and myself, AGR and Mitch and Benedict will all be back next week to break it down. Have a good week, everybody.
Just a two-man wall. Bassett goes towards the near post and puts it off the glove and in. Golden boots, my goodness, tied for the lead and scoring from a set piece. Now Polisi lining it up. Polisi, okay, Marcello. Take a bow, young man. That is a worldie. Benny does hit it. Where's the goal? Benny because for the first time in franchise history, Vancouver FC have beaten Pacific FC.